The movie HIM 2025 does not open with loud screams, bloody corpses, or cheap jump scares. Instead, it begins with silence so heavy that it feels unnatural. The camera slowly moves into an empty locker room, and at first glance, everything seems ordinary. Lockers lined up like soldiers, benches scattered across the floor, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights hanging above. But if you look closer, you realize something is wrong. The mirrors are broken, their surfaces fractured into 1,000 pieces. Each shard reflects not only a distorted version of the room, but also a distorted version of reality itself. This first scene sets the tone for the entire movie. It tells the audience, this is not a story about monsters hiding under your bed. This is a story about monsters hiding inside your head. The atmosphere is unsettling because it feels too real. We all know locker rooms. We all know that sterile, almost lifeless smell of sweat, disinfectant, and rust. But in this movie, the locker room becomes something else, something alive. The walls seem to breathe. The air feels colder the longer you stay. And you can't shake the feeling that someone is watching you, even though the room is completely empty. What makes this opening terrifying is its normalcy. Horror films often rely on supernatural elements, but HIM 2025 takes the opposite approach. It shows us a place we recognize and twists it until it feels wrong. This is a technique used in some of the best psychological horror films, such as Hereditary and The Babadook. Instead of scaring us with creatures, it scares us with spaces. The locker room itself becomes a character, a prison of memories, regrets, and broken identities. As the protagonist enters, we see him hesitating. He looks around like he knows this place, yet it feels foreign. His reflection in the cracked mirror looks back at him, but it's not the same. The glass distorts his face, multiplying his features into a grotesque mask. For a moment, it almost looks like there's another figure in the reflections, something darker, with faint glowing eyes. He blinks, and it's gone. But the seed of fear is planted, both in him and in us. This is how HIM 2025 begins. Not with violence, but with unease. And unease is more dangerous than a jump scare, because it stays with you. The longer you watch, the more you realize this isn't just a locker room, it's a doorway. A doorway into the human mind, where the true horror lives. The second act of HIM 2025 deepens the mystery by focusing on the mirrors. Mirrors have always been powerful symbols in horror. They don't just reflect our image, they reflect our fears, our hidden thoughts, and sometimes, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. In this film, the shattered glass is not simply a set piece. It's a metaphor for the protagonist's mind. When he approaches the cracked mirror, his reflection stares back in pieces, fragmented like a puzzle that can never be solved. The broken shards show different versions of his face, some older, some younger, some smiling, some crying. This visual is more than cinematic style, it's a psychological trap. It makes the audience question, who is the real person here? Is the man in front of the mirror the same as the one inside it? Or are they two separate beings, slowly switching places? As he studies the reflection, something changes. In one shard, his reflection blinks, but he doesn't. In another, a faint shadow flickers behind him. And in the largest piece of glass, a figure appears. Tall, faceless, yet with glowing eyes that burn like cold fire. This is him, not a ghost, not a demon, but something far more disturbing, an embodiment of trauma, guilt, and repressed memory. The brilliance of HIM 2025 lies in its ambiguity. The movie never tells us whether this figure is real or imagined. Is it a supernatural entity haunting the protagonist? Or is it a psychological manifestation born from years of pain? This uncertainty is what keeps the audience glued to the screen. It taps into one of the greatest fears of all, not knowing what's real. The camera lingers on the protagonist's trembling hands as he reaches for the mirror. His fingertips almost touch the glass, and for a moment, the reflection doesn't follow. Instead, the figure with glowing eyes leans forward, as if pressing against the other side. The sound design grows heavier, low, pulsating hum, mixed with faint whispers that you can't quite understand. This is not just horror, this is psychological assault. The longer you watch, the more the whispers sink into your subconscious. Then, without warning, the lights flicker. The mirror shatters again, pieces falling to the ground like rain. But the reflection remains. The man with glowing eyes is still there, standing in the broken glass, staring directly at the protagonist, directly at us, the audience. This moment cements the theme of the film. You cannot escape yourself. The mirror is no longer just an object. It has become a gateway. And once you see him, you can't unsee him. As the story unfolds, the locker room stops being just a setting and becomes a cage. The protagonist returns again and again, unable to resist the pull of the broken mirrors. Each time he enters, the atmosphere changes, subtle at first, then unbearable. The fluorescent lights buzz louder, the air grows colder, and the shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls. But the most terrifying shift comes through sound. At first, it's only silence, but then faint whispers begin to crawl into the background. They are almost imperceptible, like someone breathing just behind your ear. The whispers don't form words at first. They're fragments, noises that might be imagination. Yet the more he listens, the clearer they become. And when he finally hears them, they are not random voices. They are his own. This is where HIM 2025 reveals its genius. Horror doesn't always come from outside. It comes from within. The whispers speak his darkest secrets, his hidden guilt, his unspoken fears. They remind him of things he tried to bury. A mistake he made years ago. A failure that destroyed his confidence. A sin he never confessed. These voices don't just torment him. They strip him bare in front of the audience. The figure with glowing eyes, him, is always near. Sometimes he stands in the mirror, sometimes in the corner of the locker room, sometimes behind the protagonist in the shadows. He never moves quickly, never lunges, never screams. Instead, he simply waits, staring. And that stare is more suffocating than any jump scare. It's as if he is silently judging, silently consuming the man from the inside. The protagonist begins to lose his grip on reality. He talks to himself in the locker room, but his voice overlaps with the whispers, making it unclear who is speaking. Is it him? Is it him? Or are they slowly becoming one? Cinematically, this chapter uses long, unbroken shots that trap the audience in the same suffocating space. There are no cuts to escape, no relief from the tension. You're stuck with him, stuck in the whispers, stuck with him. The symbolism here is chilling. The whispers represent intrusive thoughts, the kind that haunt people who struggle with trauma, anxiety, or guilt. They are the inner demons that never leave you alone. And him, he's not an external monster. He's the physical embodiment of those demons. He's not hunting the protagonist. He is the protagonist, or at least the part he refuses to face. By the end of this sequence, the protagonist covers his ears, screams at the voices to stop, and smashes what's left of the mirror. But the whispers don't end. They only grow louder. And for the first time, the reflection doesn't shatter with the glass. Him is still there, untouched, staring with those glowing eyes. This isn't about escaping a haunted place anymore. This is about escaping yourself. And in HIM 2025, that might be impossible. By the time we reach the midpoint of HIM 2025, the line between reality and illusion has been torn apart. The protagonist no longer trusts his own senses. What once seemed like a simple locker room now shifts and warps every time he enters. The floor tiles stretch like liquid, the fluorescent lights flicker at irregular rhythms, and the walls breathe as if the building itself is alive. But the most terrifying distortion comes from time itself. He checks his watch, it's 2:15 a.m. He blinks. And suddenly it's 4:47 a.m. He tries to recall what happened in those 2 missing hours. But his memory is blank. This manipulation of time is subtle at first, but soon it consumes every moment. Scenes repeat themselves with slight variations. He finds objects he doesn't remember leaving behind his jacket on the bench. His shoes in the corner, blood-stained tape wrapped around his hand. Did he do this? Or did HIM do it through him? This is the moment where the film transforms from psychological horror into a full descent into madness. The audience is no longer sure whether what they're watching is happening in reality or only in his fractured mind. And that uncertainty is the essence of true horror. When you can no longer trust your own perception, the mirrors continue to play a vital role. They now reflect impossible things. Sometimes they show him standing still while his reflection moves. Sometimes they show him alone in the room, staring out as if the protagonist doesn't exist at all. And sometimes, worst of all, they show multiple versions of him angry, weeping, laughing, screaming, all trapped behind the glass, like prisoners of his psyche. The whispers grow louder, layered with distorted voices. Some sound like his own, but others sound familiar voices of people he once knew. A coach who humiliated him. A friend who betrayed him. A loved one he lost. Their words twist into accusations, pushing him deeper into guilt and despair. You failed. You are weak. You will never escape. And him is always there, closer now. No longer just a figure in the background. Sometimes the camera cuts to his perspective, staring directly into the protagonist's eyes. It feels like him is slowly taking over, moving from the reflection into the real world. This is where the film begins to feel suffocating. The editing becomes disjointed, almost dreamlike. Scenes overlap and repeat, like a broken tape loop. The audience feels trapped in the same endless cycle as the protagonist, a cycle of fear, guilt, and disorientation. By the end of Chapter 4, the protagonist collapses in the middle of the locker room floor. He tries to convince himself it isn't real. He mutters, "It's in my head. It's not real. It's not real." But then the camera pans slowly to the mirror. Him is no longer inside it. Him is standing behind him, and with glowing eyes, he whispers a single word that chills the audience to their core. Mine. As the story pushes deeper into terror, Him 2025 reveals its most disturbing layer. The idea that the protagonist is not merely haunted by him, he is becoming him. It starts small. He notices his hands trembling when he picks up objects, as if controlled by someone else. His reflection begins to speak before he does, lips moving a second earlier. At night, he hears footsteps pacing the locker room when he knows he's alone. And sometimes, when he tries to scream, no sound escapes, only a guttural growl that doesn't belong to him. The whispers have now turned into full conversations. Him doesn't just watch anymore. He speaks. His voice is deep, cold, and deliberate. "You called me," he says. "You needed me. You wanted me." These words echo like a curse, suggesting that the protagonist summoned Him unconsciously, born out of his own pain and trauma. The film's brilliance lies in how it blurs agency. Did Him always exist as an external force? Or is Him simply the manifestation of the protagonist's darkest self? This psychological ambiguity keeps the audience hooked, searching for clues in every frame. One of the most terrifying sequences happens when the protagonist finds himself chained in the locker room, though he never remembers how he got there. The mirrors all around him now reflect him in full form. A towering male figure with glowing eyes, skin pale as ash, and an unsettling smile. Yet when the camera cuts back, the chains are gone. He is free, or is he? The cycle repeats, breaking the logic of reality. The possession becomes undeniable. His body starts to betray him. He wakes up with bruises on his arms, as if gripped tightly by unseen hands. He finds words carved into his skin, phrases like "obey" and "forever." The audience feels sick, because it's never shown how the carvings appear. They're just there. By this point, Him is no longer just a shadow. He is inside every frame, hidden in the corners of the room, his glowing eyes burning through the darkness. The sound design sharpens metallic scraping, distorted breathing, and a heartbeat that grows louder with every scene, syncing with the protagonist's panic. The ultimate horror comes when the protagonist looks into the mirror one final time. But this time, there is no reflection. Only him. The face, staring back, is not his own anymore. His features have been erased, overwritten, consumed. The screen lingers on this image as him leans forward, whispering through the glass, "You are me now." And then, the reflection smiles while the protagonist does not. This is the breaking point. The possession is complete. Him has won. The climax of Him 2025 unfolds, not in the outside world, but inside the protagonist's fractured mind. The locker room, once cold and sterile, has now transformed into a surreal battlefield. The walls drip with water that turns into blood. The mirrors, hundreds of them, shimmer with distorted versions of him, each one moving slightly out of sync, as if mocking reality itself. The protagonist tries to fight back. He clutches a shard of broken glass, his only weapon. But every time he swings at him, the blade passes through empty air, landing only against his own reflection. His hands bleed, but him remains untouched, smiling wider with each attempt. The horror is inescapable. The enemy cannot be killed, because the enemy is himself. The scene grows unbearable as him steps forward, towering, his glowing eyes filling the screen. The soundtrack becomes a relentless pulse of heartbeats, mixed with whispers chanting the protagonist's name. He collapses to his knees, begging, screaming, but his voice is drowned out by the echoing roar of Him's laughter. Then comes the final game. Him forces the protagonist to relive his most painful memories, the humiliations, the failures, the guilt he buried. Each flashback plays out like a twisted slideshow on the locker room walls. The protagonist sees himself abandoned, mocked, broken. And every time he tries to look away, Him forces his head back toward the images. This is not just tormented as ritual. Him feeds on despair, and the protagonist is the perfect host. In one of the most disturbing moments, Him kneels down to face him eye to eye. Their breaths merge, their voices overlap. Him whispers, "You don't need to fight me, you only need to surrender. Stop running, stop resisting. You are always mine." The protagonist, trembling, looks at the shard of glass in his hand. There are two choices, stab him or stab himself. The audience holds its breath as the camera lingers. Every sound fades, leaving only silence and the pounding heartbeat. He raises the shard. His hands shake violently. Tears stream down his face. And then he drives it forward, but not into him, into himself. The screen cuts to black for a brief second. Then, slowly, the locker room lights flicker back on. The protagonist lies motionless on the floor, blood pooling around him. Him stands above him, smiling. The mirrors no longer show two figures. They show only him. The possession is absolute. The protagonist has lost. And the most terrifying part, the audience realizes that Him doesn't die with his host. He only moves on. The final shot is devastating. The camera pans out from the locker room door, now wide open. Him's glowing eyes flicker in the darkness as faint footsteps echo into the unknown. The implication is, Him has left the locker room. He is free, and the world outside doesn't know what's coming. The story of Him 2025 doesn't end with the protagonist's death, it begins there. The final act shifts into an eerie calm, the kind that feels more terrifying than screams. The locker room, once drenched in blood and shadows, is suddenly spotless. The shattered mirrors are whole again. The only trace of what happened is the faint sound of dripping water, echoing endlessly. But Him is gone. The glowing eyes no longer lurk in the corners of the room. The door creaks open into the night, leaving the audience to wonder, where did he go? The next sequence hints at a wider horror. A quiet suburban street is shown under pale moonlight. A lone jogger passes by, unaware that a tall shadow is watching from the edge of the trees. A child's laughter echoes faintly, but there are no children nearby. The sound grows louder, distorted, before cutting to black. The implication is, terrifying Him is no longer bound to a single victim. He has escaped into the world, feeding on anyone who carries guilt, shame, or self-hatred. His curse is not tied to one place, one mirror, or one person. It is tied to the very human condition of fear itself. The film ends, not with closure, but with questions. Was the protagonist doomed from the start? Was Him a supernatural demon, or the embodiment of psychological trauma? Did the suicide free him, or unleash him? The director leaves these questions deliberately unanswered, forcing the audience to carry the weight of interpretation long after the credits roll. The final shot is simple but haunting. A mirror in an ordinary bathroom. At first, it reflects nothing unusual: a toothbrush, a sink, the pale morning light. But as the camera zooms in, a faint outline appears in the glass. A figure, tall, motionless, with glowing eyes. Cut to black. No music, no final scream. Only silence. This silence lingers, forcing viewers to reflect on their own lives, on their own mirrors, on their own demons. And that is what makes HIM 2025 stand out as one of the most disturbing psychological horror films of the decade. It doesn't just scare you. It follows you home. The credits roll, but the unease never fades. On forums, in YouTube comments, in late-night conversations, people will ask the same questions. Did you see him in the mirror at the end? What if him is real? What if he's already watching us? And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the point.